episode 24. And in today's episode, we are talking all about a really exciting topic, the underspin backhand.
Number 24.
6 months.
Yeah, 24. Prior to talking to you this evening, Andy was listening to some of the players, and it was a year ago, almost to the day, where Kobe Bryant, he wore number 24, that he passed away.
Yeah.
Sad tragedy.
Crazy, that was a year ago.
Kobe, his daughter, and all the people with him. Number 24, skill. Underspin backhand, important skill. I've got notes. Let's go through a few notes.
Yeah.
We consider the one-hand underspin backhand as a basic shot. There's specialty shots and there's emergency shots. It's commonly referred to as a slice.
Yeah.
We stay away from the word slice because if people think of chipping, chopping, hitting downward. Like all strokes, we have to go through grip, swing, and body. When we start from the beginning stages, day number 1, it's first day of practice. Shadow swing.
Yeah.
You can drop hit a ball. Early child development classes. Kids under the age of 7. I think how Welby Van Horn used to have people, just instead of a pivot, they just would stand sideways, feet together, so the body's sideways. Mm-hmm. The art of tossing a ball.
Yeah.
So you can actually just drop the ball for the student so it goes right to the contact point. So from the very beginning, even though a little kid is not going to be playing a one-handed underspin backhand, a one-handed underspin backhand approach shot.
Yeah.
But slow reps, lots of reps, play statue, hit, hold.
Yeah.
How you position your arms. So you really started right from the very beginning. The introduction, just like any backhand, when you turn, 3 things you do simultaneously. Turn your shoulders. You change your arm from bent to relatively straight. Not locked or hyperextended, but
right.
You definitely change the position of the arm.
Yeah.
From the forehand side to the backhand side. Then you change the grip. With the grip, no such thing as a perfect grip, just a grip with the least amount of adjustment. Again, fast, because we've gone through so many things, but it all comes back to every stroke. Mm-hmm. But the 8 panels of the racket, grip's an octagon, turn the racket 8 times, 360 degrees. So every time you turn the racket 1 panel, it's 45 degrees. Base knuckle of the index finger and the heel pad are the reference points. Those 2 reference points form a straight line.
I was just going to say quickly, just if you're new listening to our podcast and you haven't heard that math before, so you just take the 360 and divide it by 8, you get 45. So every time you switch a panel, you get 45 degrees difference.
Yeah, actually going back to one of the early podcasts, it's just called tennis math. There's so much math involved, and if you truly want to teach tennis, it's like the great Vic Braden said, it's not an attitude problem that causes the engineering problem. Generally, it's the engineering problem that causes the attitude problem.
Exactly.
So grip of a lifetime. Certainly, you can hit an underspin backhand with a forehand grip, which is number 3. A continental grip's number 2. But what would be most efficient, and we'll get into the contact point, is having the base knuckle on the right side for a right-hander, the top panel. That grip, again, no such thing as a perfect grip. That grip allows someone to play a low volley. It's interesting with somebody who hits a one-handed topspin backhand. They generally have 2 grips, one for the slice, if you will.
Yeah.
And one for topspin, but you're much better off having 1 grip. We'll go through a few examples on that. Why is a forehand slice not as prevalent, not as effective? When you hit a forehand, the shoulder housing hit trails, and you have to swing across your body. It's much more natural when you hit a backhand one-handed because you're swinging away from your body.
Yeah, it can't have as long a hitting zone.
Yeah.
I like Andre's line. You bring this up a lot, Andre Agassi's line, where if you're going to hit a forehand underspin or slice, you might as well just hit it into the stands. But I know there have been some players that hit that fading, kind of inside out, outside in, kind of fading.
1978, Pammy Shriver.
Fading underspin shot is what I was trying to say.
Coached by Don Candy, the Aussie. She hit a slice forehand. When she was inducted into the Tennis Hall of Fame, she said, "I'm the only player they've let in who stands like a duck." So she did pick on herself a little bit, but in an emergency situation, fair enough, you should be able to
No, you got to have all the shots.
Hit a slice forehand. It comes down to, I always tell a story about, Federer, and he plays those unbelievable shots when he's so far off the court. But I was in Switzerland one time, and these young kids, I had some kids, and we were at some squash courts, and I'm saying, okay, let's hit some forehands and backhands in squash courts. The Swiss kids came in, and they played squash with a tennis racket and a tennis ball.
Yeah.
So I'd like to guess, and that's the way the Fed learned to hit those amazing shots.
Yeah.
The impact point, Ken Rosewall's famous underspin backhand. Racket face was tilted, a Braden project. I think it was never more than 7 degrees.
Yeah, 7 degrees.
Where most people think the racket face is open at a 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
The language for the slice, again, we film players, and when they come out, we say, okay, let's hit some one-hand underspin backhands, and they look at us sometimes like, what do you mean?
What?
Granted, they're a little bit nervous because people are watching them.
Yeah.
Cameras pointed at them. But we say, oh, no, just slice it. And they go, oh, okay.
Oh.
But some other language, chip it, slice it, knife it, zip it through.
I like that one. Zip it through.
But actually...
Or knife it a lot.
Actually,
Knife it.
There's a time and place for that type of language. Say, for example, recently, just the other day, I was telling a player, you're just not moving through your half volley. Sometimes you can even, if you have time, you can even take 2 steps back and then start coming forward again. You make adjustment steps in every which way. And players do get to the point where they can vary. It's not always an underspin drive. They can vary the angle of the racket face.
Yeah.
Somebody's in the corner and they have to absorb the pace, float the ball back.
Yeah, short angles, drop shots.
Human eye, 24 frames related to camera. We're not capable of seeing the contact point. When someone really turns their shoulders, the racket face is open in the backswing. And then when they're done, the racket face is open after impact. So just logically, a common sense notion, the racket must be open at the impact point.
Yeah.
And that's a myth. The feel, why don't you talk a little bit about that, the time the ball's on the racket?
Yeah, so generally 3 to 5 milliseconds. I mean, depending on how tight you string your racket or whatnot, but 3 to 5 milliseconds, you've got your 3 to 6 milliseconds. But it takes 50 to 70 milliseconds just for the sensation that you've hit the ball to reach your brain. So by the time you've felt it, the ball is long gone. We say 7 to 11 feet away, or a time span of 70 milliseconds. So the aftershock is really just the feel.
Feel and aftershock, one and the same. So granted, teaching is an art and a science, but also another way to say that is you can teach by feel and you can teach by fact, but you definitely don't want to just go out there and wing it without facts. Miss and misunderstandings. Again, over and over again, the angle of the racket face. When it's not really spin that keeps the ball low, it's not slice that keeps the ball low. It's really the trajectory that keeps the ball low.
Yeah, exactly.
When a teaching pro is hitting with a beginner, they start slicing the ball. So they take speed off the ball, float the ball, set the ball up for the player, but it's a trajectory that keeps the ball low.
Yeah.
Most swings, when we teach people, we film from 3 different angles. The swing for most players, it goes east and west. It goes in the direction of the baseline.
Yeah.
The path of the racket, path of the target, connected dots. The swing should really go in the direction of the single sideline.
I think that's, it's tough. I mean, I'm sure maybe we just get into this now, but if you can just get people to understand that the tennis court from the baseline is less than 20 degrees, or the angle that the racket face has to change to go from corner to corner is less than 20 degrees. And if you just would go, okay, and just show that, it would make no sense if you want to be consistent to hit the ball deep as well, but to have the racket going east to west. But the confusion is when you're watching the pros practice or warm up, especially warm up where they're hitting the ball right at each other down the middle. And so they're playing balls in close to their body, and you see more of a side spin. It's not an underspin, it's more of a side spin. And then I'm sure we'll get into more with the grip. But a lot of pros, on not even continental, it's really a composite between a continental and an Eastern. Like Rafa's pretty much his knuckles on top, Eastern forehand. And so they really have to pull the racket in towards their body to get the racket face vertical. They can't extend way out, or else the racket face would just be wide open, without having to really adjust their wrist.
No, and that comes down to no such thing as right or wrong. It's efficient, inefficient.
Yeah, in match play, it's going to look somewhat different when they're in action, playing much further away from their body. And then if they're hitting an approach shot, you definitely want to have your racket carrying out, going forward, just so your center of gravity goes ahead. If you're going east to west, your center of gravity is going to pull back towards the center of the court, which is good if you're in a defensive situation. But the other thing that we get a lot, and I'm going to put some videos up this week on social media, is where we have people hit and hold and stay sideways. One thing, when you stop your body, the racket goes 1.5 times faster. So you want to stop the shoulders from rotating. You don't want to open up. So that's one thing. And then number two is that the longer you extend out, the higher the finish ends up going. So it goes high, low, high, a banana-shaped swing. So you slightly swing down, the racket face is no more than 10 degrees open. And then as you extend out, the racket's going to go back up again and makes that little mini archway. And so when people look at some of our videos, when we teach and we have players hit and hold on balance, so they're just working on the stroke, they're not showing recovery, and they have that archway, they're not used to seeing that. So they really they wonder what's going on, or they get confused. They think it's maybe a topspin shot. But we'll have to show that. And I'll show some players, like a Steffi Graf. I saw a video of her on YouTube, and Yannick Noah hitting approach shots. And you see the archway, but they'll start to open up as they go forward and get ready for their volley. But you see that high archway finish because they're extending out through the shot. And the more you do that, the higher it goes.
Vic Braden, definition for tennis for Braden, hit targets. But really, you need to be more contact-oriented when you're working on technique than target-oriented. So contact-oriented first, target-oriented second. With more on mechanics, you want to lead in with the edge of the racket. Dennis Vandermeer, learned so much from Dennis Vandermeer. Instead of changing, say someone has a Eastern backhand grip, which the base knuckles on the top of the number one panel, instead of changing to a continental to have the racket face open and get the feel for hitting underspin, is Dennis to keep the same grip and just let the players tilt their arm back. So then they're going to start to play more with their arm from their shoulder instead of swinging from their elbow down.
And I mean, there's a lot of players that are on continental. I mean, I would say that's the most common for sure. But the thing is they're not really driving, hitting offensive underspins or approach shots. It's really becoming a lost art.
Well, we always say the biggest mistake in tennis is hitting the ball hard. But what is just mind-boggling with tennis teaching is always talking about how the very best players in the world hit the ball at the end of the rainbow. Mm-hmm. So you're looking at, say a Roger Federer. It'd be much better for a 10-year-old to look at a 10-year-old Roger Federer than Roger Federer at the end. Yeah,
and all the improvisation that goes on at the highest level as well because of the speed of the game.
Yeah, Welby Van Horn, they have to improvise with a fundamental range of correctness. Vic Braden, they can't violate physical laws. Nope. Just like the forehand is so misunderstood that people mistake the follow through. Excuse me, they mistake the recovery as the follow through.
Yeah.
And it's really mind-boggling. It's witchcraft. There's so much damage being done by how people are explained, how the forehand's being explained to people.
But again, it goes back for me, just the understanding of the dimensions of the court, and then the thought of, okay, I'm going to match my swing to the court. The forward swing. It's like, don't you want to have a hitting zone?
Yeah, shape of the swing, shape of the court. But again, back to the human eye too, is that slow it down. What do the pros actually do at the impact point? With, Roger, for example, the hand-to-hand forms a line, and we have our critics like, oh, it looks so mechanical. Yes, we're working on mechanics.
Yeah.
Hit, hold, show me the archway, show me the follow through on the backhand side, which just stays on the same side as the contact point. But what happens when some people watch Federer, I mean, he moves so well anyway, but when he hits an underspin backhand, the next thing you know, he just translates into moving into the net. So it all becomes one.
Yeah.
So when you watch it, the ball's on the strings 3 to 6 milliseconds. By the time he even feels the hit 7 to 11 feet away from him, the racket has tracked out. Then now he's starting to turn. He's going to propel. He's going to bring his right elbow back in to propel his left hip forward.
Yeah.
And people think that movement is the follow through.
Well, and the other part about that though too, with like a Roger, for especially all the practice video that's on YouTube, there's so much of it with Roger. And like I said, when they're warming up, you know, the ball's close to him inside, and he's hitting a side spin shot. You know, so they see that path of the racket go east to west a little bit and produce a side spin.
No, and also too, you go to the top tournaments and you watch the top players hit. Many times when they're just having a light hit during the tournament, they're just releasing nervous energy. Yeah. They've done all their training at home, but Joe Public's there watching, go, this is how they practice.
Yeah, let me go do this.
And that's not really how even they practice. Another podcast for another time is corrective measures, but sharing that comment with Dennis Vandermeer, tilting the arm back for underspin. Mm-hmm. Dennis used to have players with their opposite hand hold a ball hopper. Yeah. And then just toss them a ball. Mm-hmm. And then they don't swing the ball hopper around, and it really helps them keep the body sideways, keep the left arm back.
Are you strong enough to do that? Can you do that?
Yeah, with an empty ball hopper.
Yeah.
No, seriously, you have a little kid, use an empty ball hopper. You have a older kid, you can put some balls in the ball hopper. Mm-hmm. All right, Fitzell, page 3, notes. Are you keeping up? We're going to have a quiz afterwards for you, Fitzell. Drive slice versus float slice. Let's get into fact-based tennis teaching. I've got that in my notes. David Squire, I learned that from David Squire. Smartest comment that he ever made. And he's, I think, the dumbest Australian on the planet.
I think so, too.
That he's the dumbest Australian on the planet?
Yeah.
Drive slice versus float slice. How'd it go, Squire? I kind of like that.
Oh, but David Squire's son, Henry, we worked with for many years. Obviously, you worked with him when he was a little kid. I worked with him some in Germany. He's he's at Wake Forest. Sorry, Henry, that you have such a dumb dad. We're teasing. We love you.
Oh, we're fact-based, Dan. Don't be politically correct. We're staying away from that.
Never mind.
But there are times where you're in the corner where you do have to float the ball out. You're playing defense.
Yeah.
So I think in mini tennis, it's great to be able to hit a variety of shots. For example, you can play mini tennis where you can alternate hits. We'll get into a few drills, but with it's not always a one-handed backhand drive.
Yeah.
With the archway, that's the angle of the racket. That's a checkpoint. Trailing hip. Actually, when you hit, the back hip is higher. If you're leaning back inch for inch, degree for degree, as the body leans back, so does the racket face leans back. Sideways at the hit, we say this hand-to-hand forms a line.
Yeah.
It's a diagonal line when you hit an underspin backhand. When you're hitting a volley, your arms are level. Arms are kept on the line as a backhand volley. When we're shadow swinging strokes, you basically start with a backhand volley, one-handed backhand volley, and then for the underspin backhand, you just turn further. Mm-hmm. It's important, like say, the left arm back, the left palm down. We talk about efficiency, least amount of muscle recruitment.
Yeah.
We see a lot of people when they hit, they're just as a right-hander, the right hand's down, left hand's up.
Yeah.
I was looking at a coach we have visiting his backhand slice. It's the Statue of Liberty with his opposite hand. It looks like he's holding the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, kind of jazz hands.
With one-handed underspin backhand approach shot. When the ball's in flight, one can get closer to the net. Because with underspin, you're taking speed off the shot. Yeah. It's the trajectory that keeps the ball low. And then another reason is you're giving your opponent less speed. They get approximately 50% of their pace from your pace.
Yeah. Gets them out of their rhythm a little bit too.
Yeah.
Say if someone had a short hitting zone on a forehand, you could hit them 2 hard shots and then one off pace slice and mix them up a little bit. They might be early, and then if they've got that short hitting zone where they're pulling across quickly, they start framing.
Yeah, let's talk about copying the pros. Let's come back to Squire because he thinks I'm the dumbest American, and there's 330 million Americans, so maybe I'm dumber than he is because there's only, 30 million Australians. But copying the pros is a pretty dumb thing to do, really. It's just amazing how young players.
Yeah, you have to decipher the checkpoints, the fundamentals. What's fundamental and what's inefficient or a nuance,
but
and then obviously seeing things slowly. It's tough to see it.
Oh, we put a lot of content together, and we've had so many players over the years travel to work with us, and they tell us they want to be a great player, and you watch YouTube clips to be inspired. Unless you have the eye, unless you have the analytical eye, it's very, very dangerous to copy the pros.
Yeah.
With the pros, it looks like they have a wraparound. So we teach people to have their arm relatively straight. So we know the pros, say a right-hander, they're going to bend their elbow. They add another segment, it creates more racket hit speed. But you just think about Roger Federer, you read about how he was trained by a coach named Adolf Kavoski when he was 8 years old, is static balance, stand in one place, long follow-throughs.
Yeah.
So most people, when they hit an underspin backhand, they just set the swing with no body rotation. And even though it looks like that's what the pros doing, their arm is bent, but the pros, they have their back turned to the net.
Yeah.
So a little kid, they got their belly button facing the net strap, and they have their arm choking themselves, and they think they're copying the pros.
Well, the other thing too, with for example, like on a return of serve, where they, let's say you're returning 125, 130 mile an hour serve, and someone's going to chip the backhand like a Federer, he will have that. It's actually kind of just a short turn where his shoulder is just parallel to the net, and then he'll just add that little segment, a little kind of wrap around to get a little extra racket speed with that blocking chip return. But that's just another variation of a slice. It's not like your basic fundamental underspin backhand.
There's never been a player that's had more written about him than Roger Federer. He can chip a return because of the way pro tennis is played today.
Yeah.
Players staying back. When it comes down to coming back to one-handers and a one-grip system, I think of Becker, who Federer, he idolized Becker and Edberg. Mm. They shared the Wimbledon title, 3 years in a row. They collectively won Wimbledon more than that, but they don't chip returns because the player's coming in.
Yeah.
But I think also, as we get to go through the angle of the racket face, the racket face is open as it approaches the ball. But again, it's drive slice. They're not, if they're floating it, they're hitting a minus and at a real high level, the point's over.
Yeah.
It's becoming a lost art. We always share the term about Martina Navratilova, where she won Wimbledon 9 times, and a tennis group has a hard time naming 9 players that have won that shot. With I think Edberg, I believe it was Wieland, I think it was 82, and he added the one-handed underspin backhand, and in 88 he won 3 of the 4 Grand Slams. He won the Australian when it was on grass. The tactics really changed in Wimbledon when they changed the grass. Now Bandy and Hewitt, they were the first 2 players to play on the new grass, 2002, I think. That there was not one serve volley point in the final, so it definitely made a difference. History of tennis: Victor Pecci, 1979 French Open finalist, player from Paraguay. He's my age. He's 65, 66 years old. First player to wear an earring.
Man,
he was wearing an earring before anything else one was. Actually, I got on YouTube. I know you speak Spanish. We looked at the clip together where he's explaining how he hit underspin backhand.
Slice.
He beat Vilas and Connors in '79. Got to the finals, lost to Borg. Here's a trick question you ask people: what's better, an underspin backhand or topspin backhand? And the answer is which one lands deeper. People really, on the WTA circuit, Steffi Graf had such a great forehand, but a lot of WTA players complain about playing against her backhand because they never face the backhand.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that they only hit underspin on their opponent's terms. It's just an emergency shot, and they're just scrambling to try to stay in the point. They don't use it as a tool of variety. When you hit topspin, if you throw in an underspin backhand that comes in slower, usually you get a free point, because what happens is when someone hits underspin, the ball's coming in slower. Now, if someone has a really efficient swing, the racket's going to have 3 angles. It's going to be closed in the bottom part of the swing, vertical to hit, and then eventually the racket starts to open up. Mm-hmm. So just like a baseball pitcher throwing a changeup, the world-class baseball player against the world-class pitcher, the pitcher throws a changeup, they throw one in slow motion. It's just like when people throw in, like Andy Roddick would do that. He'd throw in an off-speed serve, get a free point.
People are early.
So it's really a nice trick to have when you got to be careful so you don't hit a nothing ball that's really short, but to just mix up the spin and you get a free point.
Yep.
Jimmy Connors, Arthur Ashe. Arthur Ashe was advised in the 75 Wimbledon to not give Jimmy pace. Jimmy loved pace. And that was really not Arthur's style. Arthur was boom, boom, and more boom. But
we were talking about him today. You were saying that he loves he was belting the ball. He belted everything.
Yeah, so he beat Jimmy. Jimmy was the best at that time. In 74, Jimmy won 3 out of the 4 Grand Slams, and he was banned from playing the French. He probably would have won the Grand Slam that year, but he had played World Team Tennis for the Baltimore Banners. His manager, Bill Reardon, was the manager of that team. So Vilas came along, unbelievable, the Argentine, topspin backhand, lefty to lefty. Mm-hmm. Because Jimmy did such a great job playing the ball on the rise, he didn't go with his strength, his topspin backhand. Vilas, he hit slice. That was easier lefty to lefty going cross court. Arthur Ashe, when he had to hit a slice to Jimmy Connors' forehand, it was a righty going to lefty, so he had to hit it down the line. You hear people say all the time, oh, the kid's playing with a Western grip, slice to his forehand.
Yeah.
So here's some thoughts on Sampras. After his retirement, Sampras is very humble, but he said, well, I'd like to play Nadal on grass. He later said when he watched Nadal in person, that he was totally amazed how good Nadal was on grass. But this is a very, very important point, is the best way to play to a forehand where somebody has an extreme grip is to volley to it. Because one, you're not giving up the net by, or you're not giving up offense by floating the ball, giving the opponent, a floating slice, off-pace slice. But you're coming in, and the volley is also coming in with a kind of like that laser approach.
Yeah.
The trajectory is low. So then the ball's low. So the best way to play against somebody who's playing with a Western grip is to get in and volley to it. But that, again, is just amazing. Years ago, we used to see somebody play and they just played one-dimensional tennis, and we'd say, oh, that won't work by the time they get in the 18s. But now everybody's playing the same.
Yeah.
But in the U.S. at one time, the first time you could be ranked, you had to be 13 years old. So now there's way too much of an emphasis early on. We did make the mistake years ago of not really understanding that even an Eastern or a semi-Western forehand was better than a continental. Playing with the wooden rackets.
It really comes down to stroke production.
Yeah, so it's just matchups. It's just amazing to me that a kid can, in all these podcasts we have, like you go back to where we talk about Bill Jacobson and statistics. I was on the phone earlier today with a father and his son, and he's played at least 3 years of tennis, tournament tennis, where, gosh, with the pandemic, it's been years gone by where he hasn't played any tournament tennis, but not to serve and volley one time. And, but at the same time, we don't even allow people to serve and stay back in a doubles practice.
Right.
On the website, the internet, I should say, the
interweb. Yeah.
Most people still, if you just look at different clips, angle the racket face open, you slice, you hit downward, you swing east and west, you even lead in with your elbow. Florian Meyer, who we trained, I've watched a clip he has. Ryan Reedy, another student of ours, he's an excellent communicator. He's got an excellent lesson, 17-minute lesson. But one thing, though, in listening to Ryan, is that the left hand stays back. The action, reaction, there's no such thing as a 1.5-handed slice or 1.5-handed backhand. You're going to really turn. And then as you separate your arms, when we teach kids to drop hit a ball.
Who said 1.5 handed?
Well, no, I'm saying that but that was just part. I mean, it's fantastic the class he has on one-hand underspin backhand. I know he credits Vic. He certainly indirectly spent a lot of time with the Braden information because he's been an employee of Jim Klein's for 20 years. And Jim went to the 2-year program we had for tennis teachers.
Tennis Tech.
Yes. No, what I'm saying that is that, no, he just said, well, you don't separate your hands until you get to contact. And no, you let the left hand go back. So when we get people to drop hit a ball, and again, really little kids drop it for them and just start it from the beginning. We have kids drop hit balls every day. It could be, 5 minutes in the beginning, 5 minutes at the end. And actually, when people are switching from one class to the next, typically a tennis teacher has to talk to a player, talk to a parent. Kids can get there early, say jog around, stretch, start drop hitting balls, and we just go 4 exercises, 5, 5, 5, 5. Mm-hmm. And so a beginning player, one of the 4 exercises, obviously there's a serve, forehand, and backhand, but one is the underspin backhand.
Yeah.
So we just say turn, toss, catch. You catch the racket because you can have both hands on the racket. And then it's separate, hit, and hold. And the left arm going back, action, reaction, helps getting the right arm to go forward in a faster direction.
Yeah, stop the shoulders, rag goes fast, and just for balance as well.
But the underspin backhand, if someone could just go to a backboard, take 15 minutes on a backboard.
Yeah.
Just take a piece of chalk, draw a square, and just over and over again. Because two-handers, you find when you're teaching young children, the ratio balls they've hit so many topspin backhands. You start to talk to them about a swing pattern that's different. The inverted bow, you said smiley face or banana, canoe, ear, chin, ear. Mm-hmm. But just simple basket training. That was more prevalent when kids would take private lessons. Hey, you feed me 10, I'll feed you 10.
Yeah.
I mentioned alternating mini tennis. You could just go out and play a set where you have to play one-handed. Mm-hmm. We tell so many stories about young kids for one reason or another. They're playing basketball, they fell off their bicycle, fell off their skateboard, they sprained their left hand.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to it, they have some pain with the left hand, is go out and play one-handed.
Yeah.
But you can actually go out and handicap, say, okay, you two guys play, older players playing a younger player, play the entire set left-handed. There's so many things that, I think that's where people have a tendency to get programmed out. In some ways, years ago, it was better when you just take a 1-hour private lesson once a week. But you can, do things like, okay, I'm going to tape your hand to a continental grip. You two guys play, and you have to just go play with a continental grip every shot.
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to do that. Because all the emergency shots, there's a lot of confusion on the continental family, what shots are actually hit with a continental.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to emergency shots, any ball behind you, you're going to use a continental grip.
One thing, too, we were talking about this today, just with basic fundamentals, with an advanced player or whatnot, if, or even if you're just trying to work with somebody fundamentally, is just to have them practice doing it with their non-dominant hand. So if they're right-handed, you have them do it when they're left-handed, just so they, let's say someone wants to swing east to west on their underspin or slice backhand. If you were just to have them to do it with their opposite hand, they would quickly realize, okay, this doesn't make sense, or this is really tough to do. So really on any shot to get somebody to hit with their opposite hand, it kind of helps reinforce, okay, let's get back to basics here.
Well, humility. If you have someone who's a little bit high on the ego side, or someone who's being very combative, and say, okay, if this doesn't make sense to you, try to hit the ball with your opposite hand.
Yeah.
Try knifing it, chipping it, swinging in from your elbow.
Exactly. They realize pretty fast.
Actually, through trying to helped save the Vic Braden Library. All this film, it's about the size of a 4-car garage. Julian Krinsky introduced me to a couple players in the 70s. And I went to nationals. This was 5 years ago. And it was interesting to be coaching at the 70 and over nationals. So I'm 60 and I'm watching these 70-year-olds play. And it was continental forehands and it was one-handed underspin backhands. When you're 70, you're going to be a little bit late. And those players, that age group, that was before, when Connors came along and Chrissy Everett, there was just a boom. And, now it's just the opposite, is that just about everybody's playing a two-handed backhand.
Yeah.
Now the one-handed backhand, it's very unusual to see a one-handed backhand, but all two-handed players need to learn how to hit a one-handed underspin backhand.
Yeah. You usually look like an Ashley Barty. Ash Barty's got a decent one-hander that she uses.
No, she's a very, very complete player. She's a player that's very unusual because she can play so many different patterns. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's such a great doubles player. I think at 16, she was knocking on the door to win a Grand Slam title. Maybe it was 17. With you mentioned Nadal, he has almost a forehand grip on the slice.
It's pretty much is. Yeah, I mean,
with
for sure his knuckle.
McEnroe will say that Nadal's one of the best volleyers in tennis, but that's where he gets on top of the net. Borg didn't have the best mechanics on the backhand volley, but when you put people so far out of the court, you're so athletic and you close in.
Yeah.
But again, that's where players want to look for every possible advantage to get better, especially in their formative years. And it is just absolutely crazy for parents to listen to their children and say, Rafa hits it that way. It's even crazier when the teaching pros are saying, well, this is how Rafa hits it. And that goes on all the time.
Yeah.
We had an intern here today at coach training, and he hadn't been here, but he came in the evening before. We started to talk about Roger, and I go, really? I mean, we're out here, we're teaching young kids how to hit a tennis ball and basics, and we're going to talk about how Roger hits it? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, and I love to talk about Roger Federer, study Roger Federer. Yeah. It's just so common but
that's it just goes back to stage development, like you said with Roger in the very beginning. Static balance. He wasn't taught to lag and snap ever. Sorry.
Yeah.
There's no way. And but that's unfortunately that's.
But the human brain, the calculation, but when someone can explain something to you and they have the scientific rationale, the logic. Now, granted, say young here in the U.S., and it could be someone who wants to come to the U.S., some kid's a top 10 junior in America, and they're at a point where, they're going to get a scholarship in one of the Power 5 schools, their tennis is going to help them get into a really elite academic school. It's like, okay, we'll work within your game.
Yeah.
But when you're meeting someone and they're in the 12s.
Yeah.
And their grip forces them to have a system with a higher degree of difficulty.
Yeah.
It's time to change. Now, the sport I grew up in, ice hockey, I have 3 older brothers, and they didn't have the privilege I had of going to Canada and working with figure skaters when I was a kid. And those are the best teachers I ever had in hockey. They were teaching us how to skate. And pro hockey has improved a lot more than pro tennis. There's so many things. The very, very top players in the world. But in this country, you could look at the level of high school tennis and you say, well, so many kids are homeschooling. Not as many people are playing the game anymore. Not as many athletes are playing, but the level of high school tennis has gone down. The level of junior tennis has gone down. With, the level of young people running the mile for time is that it's gone way down.
Yeah.
Anything that can be measured can be improved.
That's why I think even at the top levels, and we see it. Like I was looking at some clips today from my library, some film from Serbia. I worked with a Serbian girl a couple different Serbian girls, but I had some footage of Jelena Jankovic, and she was practicing, I think, for the Fed Cup, and the coach was hitting her some balls. She was hitting some underspin backhands, and she was hitting them high, and they were kind of floating out. And she said out loud, you could hear it from the video, she was like, I'm hitting it high. And the coach was just kind of like, it's okay, like, vamos, let's go. Come on, vamos. It was like, again, just to hit it, but there was no correction there at all. And you just think, well, someone like that, if you could just, hey, you're a great athlete, you've trained all these years, you're a physical specimen, basically at this point, you've hit 1 million tennis balls. It wouldn't take that much to give someone like that information. From my experience working with pro players, it's like, hey, you can get people to make changes within pretty quick.
Oh no, it's all attitude.
So it's like if there's so many players where if they just had a little bit of information, they're going to improve their ball striking abilities, and then the next week they could make $1 million. So,
but even at the junior level, we say awareness, acceptance, commitment. We make a video. Okay, we're making you aware of this. Do you accept this, and are you committed towards it? It's much easier for us because people recommend. We really don't find students. Students find us. And if someone gets off an airplane to come and take tennis lessons, it's a little bit more of a captive audience.
Yeah.
That so many, and I say young coaches, I think old coaches too, but you're out there and you're teaching technique, and the kids, you can just see in their eyes that they're bored. So then what happens is the teachers bail and go, okay, instruction, destruction. Yeah. Let's just have fun.
Yeah.
And they don't go slow enough. And then in the end, in the final analysis, it's just very pretentious that, well, yeah, everybody's doing great, but no accountability is like, well, okay, where did all these players go?
Yeah.
The players you started, where did they go?
I guess my point with that too is that, copying the pros, there's a lot of pros that, can they hit a slice backhand? Yeah, but do they really hit it well and use that as a tool, like an approach shot in their game? And no. Like there's a clip I've seen on Instagram a little bit of like Francis TFO, and they're going like, yeah, and they're hitting these crazy left to right, side spin forehands, and by the fourth one he hits it in the net. But it's like, okay, it looks flashy, and a lot of kids are going to see that and be like, okay, there it is, that's how you do it. But he needs help.
No, I spent some time around TFO, Francis TFO. He
if he needs help, if he wanted to have that as an actual tool, like, okay, let me really learn how to hit it, hit an underspin backhand approach, or have that in my arsenal.
But Francis, obviously a very good athlete, smile on his face. I mean, you got to love Francis TFO.
Yeah.
My son practiced with him, played doubles with him.
Yeah.
My son was supposed to play doubles with someone else, and then he couldn't play, so the USTA rep came to the dinner table and said, so-and-so can't play tomorrow with you, Connor. We got to find you a doubles player. And so Francis having dinner with him. He said, you want to play? And Francis said, yeah, but I'm terrible at doubles. And with, the horse is out of the barn. So it's like, well, when we talk about Francis TFO, it's not like, okay, yeah, he could make changes in his game, but who's he going to listen to? Like during this pandemic when people didn't play, what a time for people to go to work.
Yeah.
With chain's only as strong as its weakest link. I think that he's going to make a lot of money, but is he going to play? Is he going to win a Grand Slam?
Yeah.
It's like with.
Well, just quickly. I mean, I think that's my point. Is just because when I first started playing tennis, I didn't have lessons, and I just looked at Agassi or Chang, the players that I kind of idolized when I was really young, and I just tried to copy them. So there's going to be lots of kids out there that are going to look up to some of these guys and try to copy them when you really shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, Francis, he won the Orange Bowl at 15. I would have said, okay, let's take a year off and rebuild your game.
Yeah, you mentioned that before.
I think of Sam Querrey, now Sam's an elder statesman in tennis. He's coming probably towards the end. I mean, maybe he's got another 5 years left, but he's no spring chicken anymore. I remember telling Paul Rodert, he's back with USTA now. I remember being in a meeting with him and saying the Sam Querreys of the future. And you can tell a lot by looking at someone's backhand volley in their underspin backhand.
Yeah.
And, it's almost one and the same.
Yep.
It's like when we have kids shadow swing, okay, it's pretty simple. The forehand volley goes with a forehand ground stroke. The overhead goes with a serve.
Yeah.
And the two-handed backhand volley with the two-handed backhand ground stroke. The one-hand backhand volley with the underspin backhand.
Yeah. It's in the same family.
Here's a fun story. VJ Armitage. I think VJ Armitage is one of the best speakers in tennis. Now, there's so many young Indian kids in America playing tennis, and it's just circumstantial because so many people are in the States now. They have the academic credentials. The parents are working in the IT. They're specialists as an IT. Mm-hmm. And I always tease the Indians and go, well, you're not signing your kid up for football. How many Indians play in ice hockey? Well, the young Indian players, I ask them all the time, do you know VJ Armitage? I mean, you should go to Wimbledon, to YouTube, and that's inspiration.
Yeah.
I mean, with actually one of my students, Simon Rogers, his father was the CEO of Nabisco.
Crackers.
Yeah. Cookies, Nabisco. And Nabisco is the chief sponsor for the ATP circuit. Yeah. So there's a program called BAD, Britannica Armitage Tennis. And it was in India. Simon Rogers had a chance to work with a great doubles player. He played with John Lafayette. He played with Raven Klaassen, students we worked with.
Yeah.
You'll come up with his name.
Yeah.
We should know. He's a famous player. He was part of that BAT program. So, are you thinking? With
anyway.
No, we'll come to
I'll get it.
Here's the story though with Armitage. I mean, he beats
Leander Pace.
Good man.
Jeez Louise, I'm getting.
Can you hit the applause button?
You're wearing off on me.
You got an applause button on that machine?
Oh, I think I do. I don't know which one. Should we
Okay.
just go for it. We'll go for it. I'm gonna go for it. Could be this one right here. No, hold on. Wait for it.
Here you go, Leander Pace. All right. Amateur Hour with Smith and Fitzell.
There we got it.
So,
Late.
I mean, he has a win over Laver. He's 19 years old. So he's at Wimbledon, and he's hired Pancho Gonzalez to coach him. And so young Armitage says, well, should I play to Rosewall's backhand? And Gonzalez stands up and says, no. Don't play to his backhand. And you go to the young Armitage. And again, he's telling this story. It's an amazing story. So Gonzalez says, no. He goes, well, he slices his backhand. He goes, he's never hit a sliced backhand. He hits his flat as a pancake. Yeah. So this is what happens is it goes out and he's playing Rosewall, center court, Wimbledon. And, he looks to the booth after each point. And the first backhand, you could just see that Gonzalez is unhappy. Second backhand, he's even more unhappy. He's pulling his hair. The third backhand, it's really just game number one. He either serves to the backhand or approaches to the backhand, and Gonzalez leaves the stadium. So the match is over. He loses to Rosewall, and he's looking for Gonzalez, and Gonzalez is not to be found on the Wimbledon grounds. He goes back to the hotel. He's checked out of the hotel. This is long before cell phones. So Gonzalez goes back to Las Vegas, Caesar's Palace, where he's a teaching pro. He's long retired. So Armitage, very polite, he goes to see Gonzalez. He followed him around for 3 days, and Gonzalez ignored him. He wouldn't speak to him. And then finally, towards the end of the third day, Gonzalez just turned around and started screaming at him, I told you not to play to Rosewall's backhand.
Well, I think that's where, when Vic did his studies of Rosewall and his underspin backhand, his famous underspin backhand, went had 17 revolutions or whatever. And Vic was telling Jack Kramer about it, and he was like, yeah, what underspin, kid? That thing is flat, You really drive the ball.
Another part of Armitage speaking is, like a lot of Indians to this day, he had a prearranged marriage. And he said that his wife, selected by the parents, didn't know anything about tennis. It was so funny. He goes, but 6 months later, she was telling me I was playing crummy. Very, very funny. So with that, the kids, I ask Indian kids, Do your parents have to find, it's Indian boys. Your parents have to find a wife for you. That could be the toughest challenge in the world. Yeah. They all get a kick out of it. Okay, let's go with the Bob Lutz story. You want to tell that one? That's a great one.
Oh, you're probably more familiar with it. That's closer to your time. Right, old timer?
Yeah. So
no, Bob Lutz. I mean, out of the tennis college, Vic, they wanted to study his backhand, his underspin backhand, and because he said he came down, I believe it was a 45-degree angle with a racket face at a 45-degree angle. And so I think you know the details a little better than I do.
Yeah, I can add a story with Lutz is one of the best players. Comes out of USC, played with Stan Smith. On a given day, I mean, they were the best doubles team in the world. Davis Cup standout. He's a Southern Cal kid. I mean, Vic, knew the parents. He didn't coach Bob Lutz, but he certainly knew Bob Lutz. And in the 70s, Vic came on TV. It was fantastic. Every Monday night in the summertime, the final was on Monday night. The pro final is on Monday night. So Vic's doing these 1-minute tips.
Yeah.
And he asked Bob Lutz, hey, I'd like to have you come on. And in 1 minute, you can tell the American public how you hit an underspin backhand. And Lutz said, well, I don't hit it the way you teach it. So, and this was just over a telephone conversation. So Vic was disappointed, hung up, thought about it for a little bit, called him back, said, I'll tell you what, why don't we just film your backhand? And then we'll just tell people how you hit it. We'll just film it and go from there.
Yeah.
And Lutz said, fine. And Vic hung up the phone and goes, we got him. Because and Vic to this day will say the pros, they don't say what they do or do what they say.
Yeah.
It's been taken off the internet, but Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote so many top books, Outliers probably being the best known.
Got to try to find that clip.
It was taken down, but anyway, it was Malcolm Gladwell going over about 5 minutes just saying the pros cannot tell you how they hit topspin.
Yeah.
And he was just baffled by that. He got that insight from Braden. Yeah, just started interviewing tennis pros and asking them how they hit a basic topspin forehand. Yep. So anyway, what Vic did, he put up the yellow stripe that went down at a 45-degree angle, and almost everybody loved Vic Braden, but Bob Lutz, a few people were a little bit annoyed where, no, this is not how he hits it. He thinks his racket face is open at a 45-degree angle. He thinks he's going down at a 45-degree angle. Nearly vertical, and the racket finishes back up.
Yeah. There's a really, when you see that racket layback, there's a forearm roll, and you have to have strong, for young kids out there too, parents, if you're listening, coaches, they have to have strong arms, strong extensor muscles to be able to handle all that.
Now, coming back to Ryan Reedy, 2-minute tennis, again, excellent explanation of the underspin backhand. And he just said, well, you want to be very careful letting that left elbow drop. Mm-hmm. It's very unnatural to keep your left elbow up.
Yeah.
So the left elbow up. So he makes a very good point with that. But you really have the left elbow up, and then the left elbow goes back.
Yeah.
I think years ago, when people would teach a young kid how to do the side stroke in a swimming pool, it could be things like, okay, take the apple out of the basket and throw it away. But the left arm goes back.
But yeah, pros don't do what they say or say what they do. There's another great clip. I mean, it's the old classroom video we use with Vic. He's voiceover on it, and I think it's Nastasi hitting a serve, and it's from the cherry picker view, the top down, and he just has this one line. It's great. He goes, he says he sees the ball hit the strings, and we doubt that. It just shows how its impact, and it just shows him looking straight out towards the net. He's not even close to looking at the ball.
Vic was, by formal study, a psychologist. He was what you call ABD. We'll have a whole session, maybe 2, part 1, part 2 on Vic.
Yeah, probably 5.
All but dissertation, because what he wanted to do is prove that you could help a kid more by being on the playground and have them come into a professional office and talk about psychological problems.
Yeah.
Coming back to the underspin backhand, no imagination, no creativity. Kids just want to win. Really, it's unfortunate is that who wants to win? Everybody wants to win. You got a 10-year-old. If 64 10-year-olds play a tournament, who's going to win? One 10-year-old. We can say it where it's not too nice. If 64 idiots play a tournament, who's going to win is one idiot. Is no imagination. In other words, you're going to never serve and volley. You're just never going to serve and volley. You're 10, now you're 14. You're just not going to do that. Even when you play doubles, I'm going to serve and stay back because I want the 2-inch trophy. But people aren't going to play an underspin backhand until it's an emergency.
Yeah.
I think that's what coming back to Agassi is play it on your terms. Most people are playing underspin backhands on their opponent's terms.
Yeah.
The opponent's dictating.
And learn to have options. Like you've told this story before about Roger Federer when he was asked by Vic Braden, how did you learn to have all these different tools in your arsenal? And he said, well, I just made a list of the shots I needed to have to compete against these guys, and I went out and practiced those shots. So that's good advice from Roger.
With, Vic actually worked on TV, he did television work.
Yeah.
And, here, there, everywhere, he was in a situation where he was telling McEnroe that you lift on a topspin backhand, and McEnroe says, no way. And then Vic said, well, you actually lift on an underspin too. And McEnroe, with a little more volume, said, no way. And then Vic said, well, let's just show you film of you hitting.
Yeah.
And so that's just...
I've got that on our Instagram page. If you can look for it there, it's there. So it's lifting on both shots, ground reaction force.
So Vic was right, and it's okay. Let's look at the film.
Yep.
But the underspin backhand, swing in with your arm from your shoulder. It really turned. You get more than sideways to stay sideways. Lead in with the bottom edge of the racket. But when you tell people lead in with the bottom edge of the racket, don't misinform them and tell them, okay, the racket face is going to be really open at the hit.
Yeah,
it makes sense when people just teach by feel. But when it comes down to, we tell tennis players, we ask tennis players, have you ever played golf? And of course, the adults will say, generally, adult men will say, yeah, I've played. And I said, well, your underspin backhand's a wedge. It's a 9-iron. I mean, you don't even need a 2-iron. You need to get your driver. Yeah. But you're not trying to get out of the sand trap. It's not like you're in the dirt and there's like 6 feet of earth exactly. In front of you. Exactly. But I think Bud Collins, just the term that he had, and I love Bud Collins. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's encyclopedic.
Yeah. But
he did turn some people off with the American public. Bud Collins, there's 2 types of tennis players, those who play at Wimbledon and those who don't. Mm-hmm. And Bud, everybody thought he was from Boston. He was really from Cleveland. But as a young man, he went to work for the Boston Globe. And he just fell in love with Boston. Yeah. But Bud Collins, when it comes down to, hackers. Yeah. We hackers. Yeah. And that's where the term comes from. Of course, back in the day, people were playing with a continental grip. The number one cause of tennis elbow is obesity. People are way overweight. They're going to be late. So you start to get a little bit slow. Maybe you're not obese, but
using the forearm.
Yeah, so you
stopping the upper arm.
Yeah, you're not playing with the shoulders. On the forehand side, the thing of why the forehand causes so many problems with tennis elbow is people are trying not to hit backhands, so they're just turning over like this. Yeah. If they do try to hit a topspin backhand, they're turning over like this. But I think that if it comes down to underspin backhands, where does it start? Where does it end? It's pretty simple. On topspin, you come over the ball. On underspin, you come under the ball. Yeah. And they're both just wrong. Yeah. You don't come over the ball for topspin, and you don't come under the ball for underspin. But it's like anything else, is that, if it's a matter of trying to have a higher level of understanding, make it simpler, make it clarity, and then just go practice. But it's a tool. And, we teach people every day to drop hit an underspin backhand. Are they going to be clever enough where their opponent, it's 12 and under tennis, they're playing somebody who's been lied to, arch the back, kid's 11, arch the back, toss the ball way over your head, hit a kick serve. And this thing comes in like a wounded duck. It is going to hit the court, so it's the same level as the paint on the court. Because it comes in high, it's got a little trajectory, it's going to get up high, but there's no reason to let it get up high. But it's like Steve Denton, I always share this story. He was playing doubles with Kevin Curran against Agassi and Krickstein. And they were not doubles players. So one of them served, it was Agassi actually. So Agassi tossed ball way over his head, and Denton, just to intimidate him, just catches it with his hand and go, and he stays back. He's just coming up on the tour. He tosses the ball way over his head, stays back. Denton just catches it, forfeits the point, just catches it and looks at him and goes, really? So some kids playing where they're serving love 40. The return, they're up love 40. There's this wounded duck. This thing is just floating. And is the kid going to play an underspin backhand approach and come in?
Yeah.
When it really comes right down to it, and it's not to hurt anybody's feelings, but most kids play with one pattern. They're going to run around their backhand and try to slap a forehand. I mean, it's a crisis. I mean, a conventional approach volley. I mean, you arc a ball, hit an invitation shot, bring a kid in. Most kids are hitting. That's another thing with a one-handed underspin backhand to practice is being able to hit a one-handed underspin lob. You're going to be stretched out. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't tell you. I would be a rich person if every time I saw a junior who's almost back to the fence and they're trying to hit a topspin TV lob. Most of the time kids, they can only, because they're trying to hit forehands, they've got an extreme grip on the forehand side. And that's the only thing they can do is try to hit. They can't hit an underspin lob because of a faulty grip. Yeah. But the underspin backhand, check out Andy's Instagram. He's going to put some more information up this week.
Yeah, I'll put some up this week. I think just for me to finish with my thought on the underspin backhand is that, the racket face is almost vertical. It's not so far open like people think. And then just basic logic, try to match your swing with the dimensions of the court. Just know that you have less than 20 degrees. And if you're trying to go to the net, you want your center of gravity ahead. So you don't want to be pulling across or pulling open too quickly. You want to stay sideways. That's where like the crossover step, the karaoke step comes in. To keep the body sideways, you accelerate the racket that way. Some people ask about turning more than sideways to stay sideways, a phrase we use. It's basically that. You want to coil your body, turn your shoulders more than just perpendicular to the baseline so that you can actually unwind a little bit and then stop your body to keep your body sideways and then have the racket track out to the target. The longer you extend out, you could use your knuckles or your ring finger as a guide, like the palm's the guide on the forehand. Use the knuckles as your guide, knuckles to your target, and then the longer you extend out, just because it's a radial point, the shoulder, the arm's gonna come back up again. You're gonna have that little mini archway, but that's confusing for a lot of people. So I'll for sure put up some clips this week.
Yeah, I think
with the underspin that I've got a good slow-mo one with our boy Georgie that I can put up on our stories a little bit. Just it shows the racket face almost vertical, and then I found a few, Steffi Graf, Yannick Noah, that show that archway, on an approach shot.
Sampras. Yeah. With make your tennis game a masterpiece, inch by inch is a cinch, just keep getting better. Jim Lair, another pillar of our GreatBase. Tennis players never arrive, they're always transit to a better place. Mm-hmm. Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. It's not always about now, like I got to win now. Again, all these different coaches, all these mind vitamins. John Wooden never mentioned winning. Winning's a byproduct of skills. Yeah. The underspin backhand is a skill that you have to have. And I mean, I think parents, if they just think about what they do for a living, all the different skills they have, and just, you have to do something for years and years and years to be really good at it. Yeah. And it's so sad for young players not to have the repertoire, not to have the skills.
And like you said too, and then I'll shut up, but if you learn to hit that basic shot, then you can learn to hit, the approach shot coming in with a return. You can hit a short angle, you hit a drop shot, you can hit an underspin lob. So all those things are going to come from that basic.
Yeah, Vandermeer used to say that from basic shots, you grow your specialty shots. It's like Jana Novotná, who passed away at such an early age, Wimbledon champion. Yeah. She had it on her racket the first time to win Wimbledon, and the public picked on her, Jana Novotná, but that was not the case. I mean, she was just a complete player. Yep. But she was one of those players, like a Navratilova, that someone hits short, I'm going to take speed off of it. The approach shot is not the approach shot today in junior tennis. It's an anxiety shot. People aren't hitting the approach shot as a combination play. The approach shot is the money shot. The volley is a cash-in shot. Vic Braden, you need to value volley in position. You need to trust your volley, trust your overhead. You need to know statistics. You go to the net, you win 2 out of 3. You're just doing fantastic.
Yeah.
Make the right mistake. Be aggressive. So, again, it's fun. It should be fun to go to the net.
Yeah.
I mentioned this earlier in a podcast. A player that we've worked with, Dave Secker, who coaches at NC State, was watching her play, and she's been taught to hit these, great volleys and overheads. And he just said to her, "Don't you think it's fun to hit volleys and overheads? But what should be at the end of an approach shot is a volley or an overhead." But so that idea of, it takes some cool to take speed off the shot. And as great as Federer is, Federer would be the first one. He said it. He was working with Edberg. There were some things that Edberg did better than Federer, and one would be the backhand volley and the underspin backhand approach.
Yeah.
Federer with statistics, 2017, where Tony Gossett got him to start using statistics, analytics, I guess you'd say, is that instead of running around his backhand to playing the Rafa's forehand or then to playing Djokovic's backhand, is go in. Las Vegas is on your side if you can get to the green zone.
Yeah.
He himself, he's changed how he answers questions now. My dad said I was always chicken, just hit your backhand, running around it. But and the two-handers, I think I'm coming back to Wilander again. He added to his game. Most two-handers, the only time they let the left hand go off the racket is when they're scrambling. But anyway, underspin backhand. I'm over and out on that. I hope we helped out.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you've got any questions, you can email us info@greatbasetennis.com. Check out our website, greatbasetennis.com. Find us on social media @greatbasetennis. And until next time, we're signing off.
Remember, chips are for parties. You don't want to chip your underspin backhand. You want to drive your underspin backhand.
You heard it. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Adios.